Good morning. Welcome back to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about real estate quite a bit this morning, but other factors that go into that when it comes to planning. You know, the overall piece here is, of course, about planning for retirement. As I said, many retirees, over half the retirees in this study, said that they wish they had done more planning for retirement. And think about that. There was another study that showed that people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation every year than they do planning for their retirement. We're talking 20 or 30 years of their lives. Think about that. Now here's the other piece. The planning part of that is so critical because there's so many factors that come into it. Taxes are a big one. If you don't minimize taxes, that's just money that you're giving away basically to the IRS instead of having it available for you during your lifetime, for your, if you're married, for your spouse, for your kids, leaving it in the family as opposed to giving it to the IRS. That's one area. There are other areas that come in. Lack of planning can cause all kinds of problems when it comes to factors. Life happens, right? God forbid you become incapacitated. Do you have a plan for that? Who's going to make decisions for you? That kind of thing. Take care of your health care needs. Take care of paying your bills. Manage your assets if that happens. For a husband and wife, right? How are you going to accomplish these things? If you thought if that person, let's say you're married, if it's your spouse, and then they couldn't, then who comes next? Giving thought to these things, have contingencies in place for it. That's part of planning, is looking into the future, seeing the kinds of things that can happen and having a plan for whatever they are. Just like with investments, right? We know that we're in the longest bull market in history. We're overdue for a bear market, right? When that happens, do you have a plan? Do you even know how much your accounts might drop? You know there's a measure for that. It's called standard deviation. It's a measure of volatility. Okay, this statistical measure can give us a very good idea of what's going to happen relative to the market in a downturn. So if the market, if you have a standard deviation on the market is 15 and your portfolio is 15, guess what? Market drops 40–50%, your portfolio is going to drop 40–50%. Now it could be even more depending on the kind of things mixed in your portfolio. Knowing what to expect there and knowing to have a plan that you can reduce that volatility while still maintaining those returns. If you could cut that risk in half, where the market drops 40–50 and you're only going to drop maybe half of that or less, okay, through good planning, all right, and the way you structure your assets, this would be a way that you can make sure that you can weather those and still maintain the income you need, as an example. So now back to real estate. How might real estate factor in? With real estate, if you have real estate, are you looking at it, rental properties, is that a source for income for you in retirement? What are the risks there, and what are some of the pluses as well? And then, do you have a will or a trust or some type of plan in place? And that's where we're going to start. All right, so joining me here today, Jack McCann with McCann & Hubbard over in Franklin, Tennessee. And I've known Jack for a number of years. We've worked quite a bit with clients back and forth and helping each other. One of the things when it comes to planning is understanding that your documents have to be done well. So when with Jack, it's the same thing. We've worked together long enough for me to know if when a client has passed, that this is going to work. All right, that the planning, in fact, when we sit down with the family and we're going over administration of that estate, that in fact everything's in place and the documents have been done correctly, and we now can move forward because things are done the way they want it. And the nice thing about this too, just like with trust, avoiding probate, making it easier on the family. There are a number of different factors there when it comes to wills and trusts. But I'm going to start with something even that we maybe don't talk about, and that's what happens when someone has no plan. Okay, so you don't have a will, maybe you don't have a trust. You just, you're going to get to it someday, right? Well, maybe today's the day to think about that a little more. And Jack, you've had some recent experience, right, with that?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have regular experience with people who have failed to plan. And it's interesting that statistic about how much time people will plan for a vacation and they won't plan for their retirement, they won't plan for their death. The problem with death without a plan is the state takes over. And the state's rules are very simple and sometimes not even common sense. If you pass away, I've got 2 probates going right now where husband and wife, young kids, husband passed away. Nobody expects a young man to pass away, but it happens all the time. Just watch the news. Unfortunately, that husband, in both cases, these husbands did not have any kind of an estate plan, no wills, no trusts. They had just assumed that everything would go to their wife. Well, unfortunately, you can buy a house with your wife, but unless you state, sometimes people do this all the time, where a husband's got good credit, he's got the income, he talks to his loan officer, they start the loan process, they never even talk about, well, let's put the wife on the loan as well. She doesn't have any income, so let's not worry about it. Well, if the title company just does what the lender says, and all the lender's looking at is income, and so they're only focusing on the husband, the house can get titled in just the husband's name. Well, if he passes away with the house just in his name, it doesn't go to the spouse. It goes to the estate, and the estate is his wife and his kids. So I've got 2 cases right now where the court has to approve everything we do because the minor children are part owners of a house. And under Tennessee law, a minor child's not supposed to own real estate. So it creates a huge problem. It's way more expensive than it would be if they'd had an estate plan, even a simple one with a simple will.
This is one of those areas, so keep in mind what Jack is saying, right? If you don't have a plan, the state has one for you. And that plan is going to be the most expensive and probably the least attractive of the options available to you. Think about that. Who wants to be in, I mean, in particular when you've got minor children, you don't want to be in partnership with your children, with your real estate, and that you have to protect that asset for them. I mean, think of all the different issues that are going to come up. At some point, if you want to sell and relocate, as an example, or just, maybe you want to move up in house, down in house, whatever it might be, think of the restrictions. Now you've got to go to court to get approval to do that, and they're going to be monitoring how you utilize those funds and how that real estate is titled the next time around. All these different factors, it means you're going to need an accountant, you're going to need an attorney to help you to provide the information necessary to the court.
And an estate planner.
And estate planner, that's right. Because one of the things that comes in, and dealing with something like this goes the same like with having a power of attorney done. All right, Jack's talking about where someone passed, but now imagine that you had a incapacity, all right, and you need to access accounts, or you need to take care of business. Again, having that power of attorney for your spouse, a spouse cannot just automatically get money out of a retirement account, as an example. Okay, they would have, again, either have a power of attorney or they'd have to be appointed conservator. And Jack, this is one of those areas. If you're talking about a conservatorship, and I mentioned, I guess, with what we dealt with, we were talking about there with the minor children. But if you a conservatorship over your spouse.
Well, you raise a great point. So I've listened to a lot of men say, well, when I pass away, my wife will just sell the house and she'll have lots of money left over. She'll buy a small place to live in, and then she'll have some money to invest. Well, not if you don't have a will and you're the only one on title on the house, because that's, again, to the case that I've got going right now, we're going to sell the house. But because he didn't have a will, because he didn't have a jointly titled asset, the money has to get split between his wife and his kids. So the money that he thought his wife was going to live on is going to have to go into an account for his kids, because that's what the court requires. So he's really left his family in a bad situation. Powers of attorney, that's another good one. I've got one right now where they're trying to get something done with some retirement accounts. They don't have a proper POA. They created their own using information they got off the internet. They think, well, it's just a POA. It's simple. How hard could it be? The problem is it is hard. There's certain language that's in there for certain kinds of things, and what works in one state doesn't work in another state. And what the investment companies want is very specific, detailed language. And what I do, because I do this over and over and over and over again for so many different clients, I've seen all the things that can go wrong. And so we think about the what ifs. If you're not used to doing this, you're not used to the what ifs. You're going out into uncharted territory. And so it's dangerous for someone to actually do their own paperwork.
There's an old adage, penny wise and pound foolish.
Yeah,
and this is one of those. You're talking about your estate, all right? So hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars, right? And you're going to, to leave that to, then you're going to worry about spending $100 for a document that would take care of these things, all right? Or getting a will and or a trust done. If it, again, you're talking a fraction, hundreds of dollars, maybe, maybe a couple of grand or something to do up a really good estate plan, depending on the size of your estate and all that. Maybe you get into a few $1,000s even. All of that, though, could save, again, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, create a situation for your family where it's going to do what you want it to do, right? Most of us want our monies and our whatever assets we've got in this world, we want to stay in our family, right? We want it to typically follow the bloodline. If we don't have a bloodline and we've got charitable ones, we want it to go to the charities we want. Certainly don't want to be leaving extra money to the state or to the administration of the estate and all these extra
wasting
costs.
It on attorneys and court costs.
There's the administration part, right? So now what can we do instead? Just doing up a plan. So you start there. One of the things I mentioned, first 10 callers to my office, by the way, this week, same concept here. Estate planning is a part of the comprehensive financial plan. So if you want to have us review, all right, your estate plan, bring in your will. If you've got a trust, we'll take a look at that. If it's over 10 years old, I got to tell you, there's definitely going to be some issues that need to be addressed, because there's been different laws, the HIPAA laws for one, for healthcare power of attorneys that need to be addressed. So again, bring it in and we'll do an assessment for you. So again, first 10 callers to my office, 615-376-5325. Tess is standing by to get your information. She'll take your information down, send you a packet of things to bring to your appointment with me. And as a part of that, by the way, in addition to all the planning that we do, and as I said, estate planning is a big part of that, of course, but Jack will come in at no charge and do a consultation with you to talk about these matters as well. So we'll line everything up, and then we can go through all your things, get everything, and I can answer a lot of your questions with regard to the estate planning piece of that and help you with that initial planning and the kind of things you're going to need to know and think about going forward. And then we can bring Jack in to meet with you as well. And again, all at no charge. All right, we got a caller, and this, oh boy, new phone. Here we go. I'm going to try, Marilena. I may need help. All right, Margaret, did I get it right?
No, Mildred.
Mildred, good morning. How you doing, Mildred?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Very good. How can we help this morning?
Well, I heard you say something. I just turned it on and heard the lawyer, I guess, say something about a power of attorney.
Yes, ma'am.
Years ago, my husband and I, in '91, we had a will drawn up by an attorney and power of attorney each other. He died. We were 77 when he died 10 years ago, and so his was, that was null and void, because he died.
Right.
So anyway, I had it done by, like you said, online. Where you get those, and I have that power of attorney in my records and everything. But I'm just wondering if that would apply to Tennessee.
Well, if it's from 1991, it is way out of date.
No, that one was done. Our will was made in '91. No, this was done in 2008 or '9. I'm not sure. When I put my son, it's power of attorney.
Right.
Yeah.
So about 8 or 9 years ago.
He got it offline, and I have the document and everything. But,
right.
And we both live right here in Tennessee, so in Nashville area, though. So I just wondered, is that good or not?
Okay.
I mean, I would have to look at it. There haven't been a huge amount of changes. The HIPAA rules came in, I want to say, around 2008 or so.
Yeah, it's right in around that same range.
So that's when he died in 2008. So, and I moved here from Nashville, and we both lived in Nashville. And, but anyway, I knew that one was null and void when he died, of course. So I put that in there with my son for him. And he got, and it shows that he does have power of attorney now. About what we had before was called a durable power of attorney. Is there a difference in that?
There are different kinds, yeah. And what you could do, if you met with Mr. Parrott, you'd be able to, he can get that paperwork, and even if I'm not there, he can make a copy and send it over to me and let me look at it and review it and get back to him or get back to you. I mean, there's changes that happen every few years in the tax laws. There's also changes that happen every few years in the medical laws. And so what those powers of attorney do may or may not be current for the current law. Also, people change who they want to be their agent. I always like to have a backup agent if that first person that you chose is no longer able to do it. But then there's also different kinds of powers of attorney, as far as some powers of attorney are in effect today, where you can have your son or somebody go do transactions for you at the bank. Some of them only go into effect if you are mentally incapacitated. So if you're just sick and at home and you don't feel like going, or you become, it's difficult for you to get out of the house, that's not enough of a reason for that person to be able to exercise that power of attorney. You have to give them a different kind of a power of attorney.
Excuse me, I have 2 children, and my daughter is really unable to do this. and he's the one that has it, and I feel comfortable. I know that I have all the faith in the world in him that he would do the right thing.
Right.
And,
so the key is to make sure that the document is going to allow him to do the right thing.
Right.
So what I would suggest here, Mildred, is bring it in. You can contact my office. We'll take a look, get it over to Jack, so he can take a look at it and just give you, if there's some stuff that's missing or things that need to be added, and tell you what those are. Again, it's very inexpensive to do up a power of attorney, and getting it right, okay, could be worth, as we were just talking about, it could be a huge difference in terms of creating both problems. If you had to go be made conservator, for instance, get a court approval to do anything, have the court have to, appoint him. All of this can be very expensive and very time consuming, and so it's worth taking that time to just have us review it and make sure that it's okay, or at least, or to another attorney if you would. Okay, but again, take a look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good day. All right, this is one of the areas that I mentioned before. It's a great time. Reviewing your estate planning documents at least every 5 to 10 years is also very wise, because laws do change, and for that matter, maybe your circumstances change. Life again happens in ways that we don't necessarily always, it doesn't go in a straight line, so we get things thrown at us. And is your plan flexible enough to, in fact, accommodate those? And when that happens, if you're looking at your current documents, are they in fact going to do what you want them to do going forward, and taking advantage of the new trust laws, for instance, and some of the new protection features that can be done. So there's so many ways that basically it's worth it. All right, take the time, have them reviewed, and make sure that your document's going to do for you what you intend them to do, and keep that money in your hands and in your family's hands. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.